Thanks to the new hit Amazon Prime show, Fallout Fever is sweeping across the world, which means that many people are picking up the Fallout games for the first time or diving back in after a couple of years away. In my case, this meant finally, after all these years, giving Fallout 76 a try. I've been an avid fan of the Fallout series since Fallout 3, so like many others, I was absolutely pumped when Bethesda announced Fallout 76 all those years ago. I remember watching the announcement trailer on repeat when it first dropped, and it being one of the few game trailers that legitimately gave me chills. Look, Take Me Home Country Roads is a bit of a banger, okay? However, as is common knowledge by now, the release of Fallout 76 was marred by controversy, and the game was ripped apart and panned by critics. That, combined with the fact that I was hugely turned off by the idea of an MMO Fallout game in general, led me to not pick the title up on release and spend the next 5 years largely ignoring its existence. But as was the case for many other people, the new show gave me the Fallout itch big time, and rather than revisit New Vegas or Fallout 4 for the 1000th time, I decided to dive into Fallout 76 for a fresh experience instead. I'd heard that it had gotten much better over the years after multiple updates, but I still wasn't expecting much. There's no way that this game would compare to the single-player titles in the series that I love so much, right? Well, fast forward a couple days, and I can officially say that Fallout 76 has taken over my life. I can't speak to what the experience was like 5 years ago, but I can confidently say that in the year 2024, Fallout 76 is a fantastic Fallout experience, even if you have no interest in the MMO aspects of it. So today, I just want to gush about my time with the game and hopefully convince any other Fallout fans like me who are on the fence to give it a try, because it's worth it. Small disclaimer here, as is the case with any MMO, this is a huge game with hundreds upon hundreds of hours of content. I'm about 25 hours in and just scratching the surface of things, so to any Fallout 76 veterans watching, please forgive my ignorance on anything I say. This is very much a noob's perspective on things. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about what makes this game so much fun. I think my biggest concern with Fallout 76 and what kept me away from it for so long was that I thought it wasn't going to feel like a Fallout game. I thought the MMO aspects would somehow mess up the magical formula that I fell so deeply in love with in Fallout 3. But I'm pleased to say that I was 100% wrong on this front. What stood out to me the most during my first couple of hours in Appalachia was that at its core, this really does feel like a single-player Fallout experience. The stepping out of the vault moment that the series has become so famous for feels every bit as magical here as it does in any of the single-player games, and Appalachia is proving to be every bit as fun to explore as the Capital Wasteland or the Commonwealth. But I'll talk more about Appalachia in a bit. First, I want to emphasize just how much this really does feel like a core Fallout experience, since I know that was always one of my main worries about the game. There's a main questline that you can follow as soon as you emerge from Vault 76 that involves you tracking down and assisting the former overseer of your vault with dealing with the scorched plague that has ravaged the area. At least at this point in time, this doesn't seem to be the most interesting questline in the world, but it does serve to get you acquainted with the world and helps push you along a set path if you're looking for guidance in your adventure. As is the case with all Fallout games though, the real star of the show here is the side quests, and so far, those look to be as fun and as plentiful as I was hoping. There are multiple different factions in this game ranging from series staples such as the Raiders and the Brotherhood of Steel to Fallout 76 originals like the Responders. Some of the factions and corresponding questlines are more interesting than others, but all of them help add to the lore and make the world of Fallout 76 feel like a real breathing place. And speaking of that lore, I think it's pretty cool to note that Fallout 76 is the first game in the series' timeline. Like I said, at this point in time, I'm still working my way through the main adventure, so I can't really comment on how deep they go with the lore, but there is something special about the feeling of playing the very first chronological Fallout game. At the very least, it makes the story feel important, despite the format being slightly different from the mainline games. The point I'm trying to get across here is that Fallout 76 feels like a legitimate Fallout title, not some less important MMO spin-off title. There are daily quests and seasonal points and other aspects that are present here due to the MMO nature of the game, but what surprised me is that all this content is basically completely ignorable if you don't have any interest in it. Obviously there are other players present in Appalachia as you explore, but they're completely ignorable as well. PvP is turned off by default, so you don't have to worry about some crazy high-level asshole killing you out of nowhere as you play, which is always a concern of mine. There are a couple things you'll have to get used to if you're accustomed to the single player games. For example, since it is server based, there will always be other people in the world with you, so there's no pause function. Not the biggest deal, but there have been a couple of times where I get up to go to the bathroom and come back to a dead character. Caps are also considerably harder to come by than in the traditional titles, and there are minor annoyances related to this, such as having to pay for fast travel. And of course, with it being a free-to-play experience, there are a lot of microtransactions in the game. However, the majority of these seem to be cosmetic, and I was able to spend most of my game time completely ignoring them, as you have to navigate to the in-game shop to interact with the feature. These were all slight annoyances, but once I got into the groove of things, none of them really hampered my experience at all. Basically, if you're looking for a traditional single-player Fallout experience, you can get that in its entirety here. However, I will admit that the MMO aspects of the game did grow on me as I played, which I'll talk more about in a bit. But if you want to ignore all that and be a Lone Ranger and just explore Appalachia solo, you'll be happy to know that that's very much possible here. Which brings us to the question, is Appalachia worth exploring? Is it able to compare to other beloved Fallout locales such as the Mojave or Capital Wasteland? Well, so far, it certainly seems that way. 25 hours into my adventure and I've already fallen in love with Appalachia. What immediately stood out to me was just how different this world feels from other Fallout locations. The world is surprisingly green compared to the other wastelands in the series. Large trees dot the landscape, leaves cover the ground, and the entire world has a distinct, comfy fall feeling to it. You know, other than the super mutants, raiders, and mutated roaches trying to kill you at every turn. I'm not a scientist, so I have no idea how so many trees in West Virginia survived the nuclear apocalypse when they seem to have died everywhere else in the country, but I'm not complaining. The greenery gives Appalachia a distinct feeling and vibe that you don't get anywhere else in the series. And as is the case with any great Fallout game, Fallout 76's world is stuffed with interesting, creepy, and straight up wacky locations to explore. I've always been fascinated by the Mothman legend, so seeing a Fallout version of Point Pleasant and a Mothman museum on the map was pretty exciting for me. That's just the tip of the iceberg though. From abandoned towns with robot mayors to amusement parks to vaults, the land of Appalachia is dotted with all sorts of interesting places that I can't wait to explore. And exploring it all looks like quite the time sink, as the map is divided into 6 distinct regions and it looks absolutely massive. Apparently Bethesda is also releasing another major update for the game later this year that will bring with it Fallout 76's first official map expansion, which will make the world of Appalachia even larger. And if that's still not enough, I was surprised to learn that the game also has an expeditions feature, which allows you to travel to and take on exclusive missions in 2 other locales, the Pit and Atlantic City. So yeah, all this is to say that the world of Appalachia is absolutely massive. Another one of my preconceived notions about Fallout 76 was that the world itself wouldn't stack up to other settings in the series, as the developers might phone in some of that content to focus more resources on player-to-player interactions. But so far, this seems to be another thing I was dead wrong about. The world of Fallout 76 seems to be just as huge and robust and magical as any other map in the series, and I can't wait to continue to explore it. Hopefully by now I've already convinced other Fallout 76 skeptics to give this game a shot. Trust me, I was the biggest skeptic out there and it has completely won me over. However, I do want to talk about one more thing. The MMO aspects of the game that I was so hellbent on completely ignoring, well, they've kind of won me over as well. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I was pissed when I realized that Fallout 76 was going to be an MMO. However, after my experience with the game thus far, there's no denying that this format actually kind of suits the series and is executed very well here. First off, it makes sense from a story point of view. The beginning of the game marks Reclamation Day, and the residents of Vault 76 have emptied out into Appalachia with the goal of making the land livable once again. So from a lore standpoint, it's reasonable that as you adventure, you would encounter other former Vault dwellers in your travels. And then of course, there's the base building aspect of the game, which is another feature that grew on me very quickly. The series already took a big step in this direction by introducing the base building system in Fallout 4, so it makes sense that they would continue to expand upon it and really flesh it out here. Like with most of the other MMO aspects present in Fallout 76, this is largely ignorable if you have no interest in it, but speaking as someone who has only dipped their toe into this portion of the game so far, I can already see that the potential is immense. Parts of the system can feel clunky at times, but the actual building process itself is simple, snappy, and extremely addicting. For the time being, I have a very humble abode, but I've enjoyed visiting other players' housing masterpieces, and I'm excited to really dive into the process myself soon and build something I can really be proud of. I remember getting deeply lost down the settlement building rabbit hole during my last Fallout 4 playthrough, and the system looks to be improved and more polished in Fallout 76, so I can see myself losing a dangerous amount of time to this down the road. The fact that this is now such a social aspect of the game, allowing you to visit other players' bases and host them in yours, makes this feature feel so much deeper and more rewarding than it did in Fallout 4. Base building also serves to add a tremendous amount of replayability and evergreen content to the game, as searching for base building scraps and materials out in Appalachia ensures that the player will always have something to work towards if they decide to engage with the feature. And really, that's one of the things I'm most excited about in regard to my Fallout 76 future. There is an absolute abundance of content here. Fallout games have always been epic adventures that can keep the player busy for hundreds upon hundreds of hours, so perhaps the marriage with the MMO genre always made more sense than we originally thought. Fallout 76 has all the traditional quests of the single player games, but also adds daily quests and events that ensure that the player will always have something to do. And most importantly, most of this content is a lot of fun. Sure, there are some daily fetch quests in here that are a little more than filler, but a lot of the events that have you teaming up with other players to take down hugely powerful monsters are an absolute blast and feel like they fit seamlessly into the Fallout experience. All Fallout games are big, but Fallout 76 feels like it might be the biggest, which goes a long way in this series. Like I said before, I can't speak to the game's notoriously bad launch. I can only speak to Fallout 76 in its current form. And in its current form, it's an absolute blast and a beautiful Fallout experience. My feelings could change, but for now, I'm absolutely loving Fallout 76, and it feels like I will be adventuring in its world for years to come.